Alright, so here we are, our second time doing Jack Tales. We're wondering, we read a couple of them to you already to figure out what weird things Jack has done, but there's a whole bunch of Jack Tales out there. There's a whole bunch of people who will make their own stories, combining things that they've heard from others, making their own creative juices flow, and making their own stories. And you guys are going to do the same thing. You're going to be making your own Jack Tales. But we got to figure out what's in those Jack Tales, what things you want to learn about Jack Tales, what things you don't know because you've only read a couple of them, what things you want to find out about Jack Tales.
There's a beanstalk in every story.
Is a beanstalk in every story. There seem to be a lot of similarities in these stories. So if people are familiar with those stories, they go, oh yeah, I've kind of heard this one, and then maybe they'll hear the new twist and be like, oh, that's interesting. But what else do you want to know about some of these Jack Tales, these folk tales?
Jack's always poor.
Is like, you're wondering why? Or is he in every story?
Is he?
Okay. Is Jack always poor? That certainly would give him some motivation to do some of the things he had done, right? Tell me something else. Something we don't find out about Jack Tales.
What is Jack's last name?
What is Jack's last name?
Jack's always doing it for something that he wants.
So there's a reason he wants something, right?
He always
Okay.
wants.
Something.
Are all the stories fantasy?
Are all, ooh. So the elements of fantasy are things that couldn't happen in real life, right? So you're wondering, are there stories that they could really happen? That's fantastic. What else do you want to find out?
Could Jack and the giant become friends?
Is it always a giant?
No.
Are there stories where Jack is faced with some other bad guy, some other villain?
Yeah.
Can you think of any right now?
A lion.
You hear the story with him with the lion, right?
Does Jack have any pets? Yes. Does Jack always be poor?
Alright, so I'm going to pass out some Jack books. You're going to work with some people that are close to you here. I've got a bunch of Jack books and a few other legend books in here. What you're going to do is you're going to see if you can figure out some answers to these questions that you pose, just by looking through the Jack Tales. A good indication if you're in the right place that you're finding something is the pictures. Use those pictures. Your answers won't necessarily be the pictures. You won't necessarily find everything there. But if you go, oh, well, this is where he's facing the villain. This doesn't look like a giant. And then you can read a little bit to find out what that villain is. So use those pictures to help you, but the answers are going to be where? In the story. Okay. Alright, so what cats and So you have to figure out how she's saying that, right? It says, you really like to make your acquaintance? Or is it, you really like to make your acquaintance? So it's Phil? What does it say?
Oh my gosh.
It's in the way, so. Alright, so let's see if we found some of the answers to your questions that you came up with. Did anybody find any answers to the beanstalk in every story? Did you find something? Is there a beanstalk in that one? Yeah. There is. Is there a beanstalk? Did somebody have a book that did not have Jack with a beanstalk? So a tree. Alright. We have trees. What else?
You just walked up to the house.
Just walked up to the house. Walking along. What else? Live in the mountains. Okay.
Well, Jack goes to work.
Where Jack what?
Goes to work.
He goes to work. Did he have a job before?
No.
So he's trying to make money, right? We don't know if he was actually poor, but he definitely needed to go to work.
Yeah, and he had different pets in this one. He
Different
had
pets?
dogs and stuff.
I will get to that one in just a second. But he seems like he doesn't have a whole lot of money, right? Some of them he's completely destitute. Some of them might be okay. What'd you find?
No, he didn't find where he wasn't poor,
Uh-huh.
but he was just in the woods running from a hairy bear.
And why wouldn't you be in the woods running from a hairy man? I mean, that happens to everybody, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so what is Jack's last name? Did anybody find a last name for Jack?
No.
Why do you think you don't have a last name for Jack?
Because he's in so many different stories.
He's in so many different stories, and these stories are from where? And
Mouse.
everywhere, right? If you make this a story about a specific person named Jack Smith, you now have a single character. If you have a character named Jack, it could be
Jack Boy.
anybody. Jack and Giant Friends, anybody found where everything happily ever after? These are not happily ever after stories.
He has 4 cats.
4 cats,
I saw a dog in there.
dog,
A dog and 2 brothers.
2 brothers. You estimate, is Jack your age? Is he your age?
Jack's like 21.
Maybe 21? 15? Is that about right?
He's probably 16.
He's old enough to know better, right?
He's probably 16.
Old enough to know better. So now's the fun part. We've taken some of the elements from this story, and you're going to make them into something on your own. But you're not writing the entire story yourself. You're writing just one small piece of the story. I'll show it to you. And this is where the idea came from. This awesome book was called the Superman Mix and Match Storybook. Doesn't that look dumb? Yeah, okay, so this is from a long time ago. But here's what this book did that was pretty cool. You open it up, and you got a story here. Toyman was bouncing along on a jet-powered pogo stick. As Toyman would, right? With a giant doll equipped with a stolen nuclear warhead aimed at the Metropolis Arsenal, when suddenly a wall crashed open and Superman blew the deadly device into outer space. Whoop-de-doo, right? Except this page doesn't turn altogether. I'm going to flip up just this first page, and now I have Mr. Mixelplick was floating on a jet-powered pogo stick with an ash can full of laughing gas, able to shrink hundreds of people, when suddenly it melted and Superman trapped the menace. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
Well, the story is just dumb, but isn't that cool? You can change this individual pieces. So we can have Brainiac was gliding along on his stolen atomic flying skates. Because if you don't have your own atomic flying skates, you'll need to steal them. With an atomic cannon, headed for the Metropolis Aquarium, when suddenly a tractor blocked the way, and Superman kicked the witless one onto another planet.
Yay.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
The point of this is, in each one of these little segments, they talk about just that section. When they refer to the villain later, they don't refer to Brainiac, because Brainiac might not be in the story. So Brainiac was gliding along doing all this stuff, and Superman captured the evil outlaw. If they said Brainiac, then it wouldn't make sense if Brainiac wasn't at the beginning, right? So they call the villain an evil outlaw. Or in this one, Troublemaker. Superman zoomed down to hypnotize the Troublemaker. And Superman laughed at the defeated villain. And because, so you guys are going to be writing a Jack tale, but you're going to be writing just one section of the Jack tale. Using all that information that you just gave me that you found out about, using your own creative juices to add some flair to it, but you're going to be writing one section. So if you're writing this section, you'll be writing about the villain, you'll be writing about, you'll name him, tell all about him. But if you're writing a different section, you're not going to mention the villain because you don't know who that villain's going to be. You'll say words like villain, evildoer, bad guy, right? Make sense? There we go. So if you're doing part 1, you're going to introduce the characters and the setting. That's where it takes place. You're going to describe how poor and destitute Jack is, because Jack didn't have a whole lot of money in all of our stories. You're going to describe how the characters are suffering. How much do you need to write? 1 paragraph. That's it. Maybe 2 if you're really ambitious. So you're going to introduce the characters. That would be Jack. Who else does he live with? Mom, and maybe brothers and sisters or pets if they're needed. If you're doing part 2, then you're going to introduce the task that Jack is taking. Whether he's going to climb up the, trade in his cow for money, or whether he's going to try to find the Northwest Wind. Introduce the task he's doing. Be specific about why the task needs to be done, and how Jack thinks he will do it. Remember, he is not all that bright. How stupid. You might be doing part 3. If you're doing part 3, Jack will be making a seemingly stupid decision, like trading in his cow instead of money and some magic beans in the normal story. And he will lose the only thing he has, but be general. Don't describe the thing he loses. Somebody else is telling him about that thing he's going to do. Say things like item or object. But you don't want to say his cow, because the person who read the other part might not mention anything about a cow. Introduce what new thing Jack has acquired. This is where you get to come up with the magic thing he gets, or an unusual weird thing. It involves some sort of magic. Jack returns with his new item, and his mother has some reaction to it. You might be writing part 4. He sets out with his new item and faces a villain. Don't name the item, you're describing the villain. It needs to be instantly recognizable. The villains are always weird, unusual, not just normal people. Giants, there's one over here with 2 heads. There's some creature. They always are instantly recognizable as being bad, okay? So you get to describe the villain here. Describe what the villain does to show he is bad. Maybe he's chomping people. Maybe he's stomping stuff. Maybe he's stolen things. You get to describe that villain. Part 5. Tell what things Jack sees that the villain has. Maybe Jack wants to steal them. That was a pretty common thing. Jack is stealing those things. Describe the items and how Jack is able to do it. Jack's big climax. You're going to defeat the villain. Don't tell who the villain is. Somebody else is the villain. You'll use words like villain or monster, evildoer, bad guy. Tell what Jack does that is part luck and part skill to defeat the villain. This is the climax of the story. Make it exciting, but be sure it makes sense. Use use a magical item, some fantasy thing. Show what it does magically, but don't tell what it is because we don't know. And conclude with a couple of sentences to tell how everything turned out for Jack and his mom. Good? Okay, so how's he gonna do? Well, he is kind of a thief in these stories, isn't he? Alright, so you're just writing a paragraph about Jack and his family don't have food, and he's gonna go steal it from his neighbors. He's so bored. Okay. Can you tell about some things maybe about his house? He's so bored. What his house might be like? What his house be like? Yeah, good. It would be perfect shape. It's a small, not big, one bedroom in his head. And what describe what it would be.
Can you sharpen them?
If you walked up. Perfect. Now you're all doing some roof is messed up and it's leaking. So in your paragraph, you can talk about this. So before their house is falling apart and the roof is leaking. Now you got it. That's perfect. Now you've got it perfect. If you get your building is up and season, and that's going to lead straight into the big fight, right? Okay, so we need to clarify that in there. So for all of us, we need to know why it is, like, how that happened. Is that some magical thing about this thing? Remarkably unusual, fantastic stories you create when you put your heads together and don't know what the other heads are doing. There we go. Let's switch them all up. Characters are Jack, mother, sheriff, and a dog. Takes place in a town. They were poor because they didn't have anything for money. They were suffering so bad that when it rains, it leaks in their house. Jack snuck out of his home and ran to the nearest pond. He took a jar with him. He scraped at the algae until he felt something squirmy in his hand. Perfect, he said, as he put a leech into the jar along with some water. He repeated this process 6 more times. The reason he was getting leeches was for his family's magic. On the way home, the jar slipped from his hands and hit the path and shattered. The leeches began to chase. He gave away his car that he traded for a magic item. Made a bad decision because he traded something he really needed for something he could have that was useless. Jack returns with something his mom thinks is useless but really isn't. So his mom got mad because she thought he traded all he had for something he didn't even know how to use. His mom got super mad. Then Jack stumbles upon a dark-spirited devil unicorn with 100 million mushy cupcakes to throw. And everything on the unicorn is red and black and a baby sidekick. Jack sees the villain, has newborn puppy dog, and Jack really wants them, so Jack bought a big brought a big bag with him, and he takes the puppy dog carefully and puts them in his bag when the bad guy was not looking. Next, Jack sees a lot of golden phones, of course. So Jack thought that it was so cool that Jack put the phones in with the puppy. Next, Jack saw a huge bag of gold phones, so that when Jack was done, he jumped down and ran home. He's up here. Oh. Jack grabbed police tape around the drying cement for a new road. Jack tied up the villain's feet as it tripped after stumbling. It fell right into the wet cement, and the cement dried around it. As the villain's body burned into dust, gold coins flew out of his stomach. With the coins, Jack and his family lived happily ever after. Jack has two siblings, Lily and Luke. They had a little cabin and only had one bedroom, and that is all. And they had little food, and it was at the far side of town. Jack needs to get food for his family. They needed milk for cereal and apples for apple pie, so he decided to steal some from his neighbors. He is pretty much a thief in a lot of these stories, isn't he? He snuck out of his house and he was off. When he got there, at the cow pen, he got his bucket and he tried to milk. He forgot how, so he looked around and found a bucket of milk. He replaced it with his empty bucket, but the milk smelled and had gone bad. But he quickly ran to the apple tree and he got 5. That should be enough, he said. Jack traded in chickens for a magical item, when he got home, his mom was furious. She told him to get rid of it, so he threw them outside before he went to bed. Jack's arch rival, whose name is Muscle Man, with 2 heads and muscles bigger than a mansion and thighs longer than a school bus, and the best of all is the most gold in the world and rules the island and lives on the tallest peak. He even has what is that? He even has a day especially just for him, and the biggest boaster on the island. He also gets everything he wants. Instantly recognizable villain, right? Then Jack stumbles upon Jack wants to steal the golden heart from the villain. He steals it by sneaking into the value room. It was filled with treasures, and Jack stole it, and it was almost busted by the security system. Jack picked a fight with the villain. They both took a few punches, and Jack finally took him down, and he walked home and lived happily ever after until age 82, till he went blind and he walked off a cliff. The end. That's fantastic. You guys did a great job on these. So we took our elements of Jack's stories, took some normal things that are in a lot of these stories, mixed them with your own creative juices, and you guys came up with something pretty special.